Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at BTB World. Nelson Mandela once said that overcoming poverty is not just a gesture of charity, rather, it is an act of justice. It is a protection of fundamental human right, the right to dignity, and, of course, having a decent life. The question then is that have we or have we not in Pakistan been able to do the same? And this is something upon which we'll be shedding light today. Overall, we'll not only be talking about poverty as a very pressing, socio-economic issue in the Pakistani society, but we'll also be talking about how it does actually impact the society at large. We'll be talking about how it does unfortunately hinder, health and of course educational outcomes by that yardstick too. We'll also be talking about not only, of course, the factors which do contribute to poverty, but in that regard also, the solutions when it comes to overcoming poverty. In this regard, we'll be, drawing upon the fact that when it comes to the work of the government, when it comes to the work of the civil society, how do we see governmental entities and non-governmental entities collaborating, or for that matter, working in their respective rights so as to do away with poverty. In this regard, we'll also be delving upon the fact that when it comes to ensuring that everybody has that access to education, to what extent would it be fair to say that education is that solution so as to overcome poverty? And in this regard, something that we'll be equally shedding light upon is the fact that when it comes to technology, what role can possibly technology, more particularly artificial intelligence, play when it comes to eradicating poverty in the Pakistani society? Last but not the least, we'll also be talking about the role of media, especially when it comes to shaping the right narratives and perspectives, especially when it comes to covering or giving due portrayals of characters of poor people per se. And last but not the least, in this regard, we'll also be talking about how at a very basic level climate change, or for that matter the environmental issues at a very basic level, then intersect with poverty. All of this today, that too with an extremely pertinent panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Ms. Zara Gilani. She's an environmentalist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining.
Alongside her, I have Ms. Mehrunisa Sajjad. She's a social analyst and she's also a gender expert. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And my third panelist via telephone line is Amjad Saqib Saab. He's the founder and chairman of Akhuwat Foundation, and he's also the chairman of Benazir Income Support Program, alongside being a renowned social worker too. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and welcome to the show. Now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
In the heart of Pakistan, where vibrant cultures converge, lies a shared aspiration. The elimination of poverty, yet woven into the fabric of society, are challenges that hinder progress towards this noble goal. Socially, poverty casts a long shadow over Pakistani society. It denies millions the basic human rights and opportunities they deserve. It perpetuates a cycle of disadvantages, limiting access to education, healthcare, and essential services. Moreover, it fosters a sense of hopelessness, dampening the spirit of communities striving for a better tomorrow. But amidst these struggles, there are stories of resilience and hope. Families band together, supporting one another through thick and thin. Communities rally around those in need, demonstrating the true essence of solidarity and compassion. Enterprising solutions are emerging, driven by the spirit of innovation and collaboration. Entrepreneurship programs empower individuals to break free from the cycle of poverty, fostering economic independence and self-sufficiency. Education initiatives provide pathways to knowledge, equipping future generations with the tools they need to thrive. Through sustainable development projects, access to clean water, healthcare, and infrastructure is improving. These initiatives not only address immediate needs but also lay the foundation for long-term prosperity. Together, as a united society, we can rewrite the narrative of poverty in Pakistan. Let us stand in solidarity, embracing the power of collective action to build a brighter, more equitable future for all.
Welcome back. We just saw this report. Now to get the conversation started with you, sir. So when we do talk about, generally eradicating poverty from the Pakistani society, we need to get our definitions clear. When we do talk about poverty at a very basic level, could you please clarify for the benefit of the audience that what all does poverty then strictly so entail? Is it poverty only limited towards any person's household income, or does it have a more broader definition, broader connotation, so as to also include a lack of access to education, employment, or even healthcare facilities?
Yeah, the point is that we have to understand what poverty really is. In fact, it's a multidimensional phenomena. It is not only the financial poverty, lack of capital, lack of money. It entails many things. Lack of education, lack of social capital, lack of housing, lack of any employment opportunity, lack of health services. So there are different manifestations of poverty.
Right,
and
sir.
Any strategy which you would like to employ, that will have to take care of all these, different dimensions.
That's very rightly put by yourself, because if we do want to understand what all does poverty then actually entail, we must at a very basic level also understand that how does poverty intersect with not only education but healthcare disparities too. But moving on, sir, another question that I would want to put to you is that when we do talk about solutions, do you as a social worker, do you as a social entrepreneur feel that education by itself is the most powerful tool when it comes to doing away with poverty? Because a lot of times we also see that people who perhaps might be educated, they might not have those ideal jobs which help them plunge themselves out of poverty.
There are different terminologies used. Reduction of poverty, alleviation of poverty, or eradication of poverty. By different means. For example, if you give charity, if you give somebody food, if you give somebody clothes, you are reducing his poverty. You are alleviating poverty, but you are not, eliminating poverty. Poverty elimination would mean that if you help somebody to stand on his or her own feet, that is the intergenerational phenomena.
Right.
And that elimination will only happen if somebody gets education and, goes to university and has a decent job. Or somebody has a sufficient amount of capital to start a business and he becomes a successful entrepreneur. Or you give somebody enough skills that he or she is able to employ those skills and come out of poverty. So there are different strategies, different levels, different, ways to come out of poverty and support people. That's why different programs are started. If you start a support program like Benazir Income Support Program, this is not poverty alleviation program. This is a support program, and you give people some support, and because they are already earning something, and this support will help them to reduce the burden of poverty.
Right, sir. On which I'll come to you, Zara, and here we must talk about this entire issue from the viewpoint of environmental challenges too. Now, we do understand the fact that people who are less affluent or poor for that matter may be disproportionately impacted by environmental challenges or even climatic changes, so to speak. And this is something that we did see happening in Pakistan too, when of course Pakistan was hit by those catastrophic floods in the year 2022. So overall, as an environmentalist, how do you see that basic link between poverty and climate change or any other environmental issue?
Definitely, there is a deep link between climate change and how it affects the most vulnerable strata of our society, like the people living up north or anywhere in Pakistan who are below the poverty line. So we saw that these people were displaced, and they have there was food insecurities, children were deprived of their schools, their education. Obviously, these were great hazards. Women were most at risks because they were not able to reach out for food from the Russian depots, because you know how our societies are, you know, where women need to be chaperoned by the males. But in such catastrophic conditions, you know, these put limits.
Right, Zara. But moving on, when we do talk about marginalized communities being worstly hit by climatic changes, we also understand the fact that yes, this is something which just doesn't occur in Pakistan. It equally occurs in other parts of the world too. But when we do talk about, you know, then mitigating the impact of not one, rather various environmental issues, do you not feel that as an environmentalist, people who do belong to the vulnerable segments of the Pakistani society, they should be given an equal say on the decision-making table too?
Definitely, people who are most vulnerable, definitely their point of view and their approach and their decision should be considered. But then, as you said, that in other parts of the world, the literacy levels are high. Over here, this is the difference. In Pakistan, you have very, very low literacy levels. And to have a decision from such people, you need to educate them. Bangladesh is a good example. The government of Bangladesh, they educated each and every village. And these people were ready for a flood response protocol and protect themselves from the dark side of nature.
Right. So it's just not one thing then, it's a combination of various factors on which I'll come to you, Meronisa. So when we do talk about the issue of poverty, that too from a gender inequality lens, we understand the fact that in cases more than one, gender inequality perpetuates cycles of poverty too. There have been cases, for example, in Africa, we understand the fact that, you know, poor women, especially those belonging to the rural areas, they might not have that adequate access to the healthcare, which of course plunges them into poverty or vice versa. And then we've also seen countries that women might be forced to work in unsafe conditions below the minimum wage rate just because they are poor. They don't have that say on the bargaining table. So how do you, as a gender expert, then analyze the intersection between gender inequality and poverty per se?
So I think gender inequality and poverty is inextricably linked. So to start off from, when a girl is born, from the beginning, when you discourage her from attaining an education, when she is denied the chance to experience or engage with the external world in any meaningful way, and when she is raised with this expectation that she is confined to the domestic affair and her purpose is limited to that of marriage or bringing up children, then from a very young age, firstly, that girl child herself also does not have larger ambitions or dreams for herself. But secondly, if a girl is not put through school, then obviously employment opportunities are limited in the future. More often than not, these girls are then given away in child marriage, which means is that they have early pregnancies, they lead to the population problem, overpopulation problem.
There's a higher maternal mortality rate that way too.
Precisely, in girls of younger age. And then when they are giving birth to several children where they do not have the means or the resources to bring them up, then the quality of life with each successive child goes down for all of those.
Right, and then this is something which also forces people, women or families per se into intergenerational poverty too.
Absolutely.
But moving on, when we do talk about this from a social perspective, now we understand that at one end women have, you know, that responsibility of doing all the household work and then of course looking after children too. But then this again needs to be balanced against their right to go out to work, to be, for that matter, not to be economically marginalized. How do you as a woman yourself feel a balance can be struck, a balance in which women get to do what they have to do as per the societal and cultural standards, but at the same time they aren't deprived from their right to work too?
So there are several things, right? I think with social media and with the internet, there are, and especially after the pandemic, there are so many opportunities of working from home. We've realized that it's not always feasible for someone to step outside the house 5 times a week to pursue a job. So there's that. But other than that, you see, we recently had the maternity leave law which was passed, mandating maternity leave, laws like that. And in addition to that, recognizing that caregiving is also unpaid labor in a way. A woman cooking and cleaning and looking after all the children in the household and sometimes elder members as well, it comes at a cost of the economic disempowerment of that woman. And I think we need to recognize as a society that we need to provide childcare services or facilities such as daycare centers. In the Western world, we see this, that where economic participation of women is a given, they have structures that make it that facilitate
Right.
the continued employment of working mothers.
Also the men of the house,
Absolutely.
because we do see, just like you yourself quoted, in the Western world, we see that these caregiving roles, they are divided.
Amongst the
Men
two,
and
exactly.
women, they are equally distributing the household work amongst themselves.
Yes.
So women can also go out and work. So by that virtue, I think this is something which should be equally applicable in our Pakistani societal context too.
I agree. I think it is essential, you know, we're living in the 21st century, and it is essential for men to take on this responsibility, that it is your job also to help your wife out with chores, to help your mother out, your sister out. If you're eating at a table, it's okay for you to wash your utensils as well. It's okay for you to, in fact, you are also a father, you are a parent, you have equal responsibility for bringing life into this world. So you need to share the responsibility and burden of that equally as well.
And then at the end of the day, this is something which is equally beneficial for the entire family or household per se, because if a woman is stepping out of the household, then she is bringing back income to the house and helping them plunge themselves out of poverty. On which I'll come to you, sir. And as chairman of the Benazir Income Support Program, my question to you would then be that what all does this program actually entail? How does it particularly aim so as to provide an additional source of income to the families, or for that matter the individuals that it is for that geared towards? And when we talk about evaluating its very effectiveness, what are the evaluation mechanisms through which we can see that yes, this initiative, this very program has had a practical impact?
You know, there are different programs for supporting people to fight against inflation or reduced income. There are conditional grants, there are unconditional grants. Benazir Income Support Program is not poverty eradication program. It is a support program which helps people to lessen the burden of extreme poverty. For example, if we give 3,000 to 4,000 rupees to a family per month, it will not eliminate poverty, but it will at least equip the family to have some more income so that they can have a little bit quality food or send their children to school. So it is a support mechanism. Sometimes it is unconditional so that people can buy the necessary food item, and sometimes it is conditional. That means if you send your girl, boy, or children to school, and then if they go to school for 75 days, 75%, then the family will get a certain amount. So this is a conditional cash grant, and there are unconditional cash grants. So poverty alleviation has different phases, stages, levels. So this is a support program based, and then you can build on poverty reduction or poverty elimination programs by giving them skills, education, and then microfinance, access to capital.
So many other things, and also, sir, by the use of technology, because now we do see that a lot of people are resorting to technology, even artificial intelligence by that yardstick, so as to empower the more marginalized communities in the country. But sir, when we do talk about BISP, that is the Benazir Income Support Program particularly, one concern which is often raised is that we have to ensure that the money to whom, of course, this financial assistance is directed to actually reaches the people who are targeted. So how are concerns of transparency looked into in this regard? Because that, again, at the end of the day, is a very legitimate concern.
Yes, that's right. This is the opinion of World Bank, Asian Bank, and international agencies that this is one of the most transparent programs in the world. We have a great database, and in that database, we have scorecards, and every family in Pakistan has been given some scores. So all families which are under 32 PMT, we call that PMT, poverty measurement, scoring card. Poverty means scoring. So any family which is less than 32 is entitled to get this support from Benazir Income Support Program. And I have personally visited hundreds of such families in different areas in all 4 provinces. And, this is anecdotal evidence as well. And the entire survey has been based on 61 indicators. the inventory of these people which we have a countrywide survey, and every family was measured on 61 indicators and given scores. So there is no political interference. This is a survey-based identification. This is not a person-based or representative-based identification. Survey through qualified firms which go from house to house, door to door, and measure people according to, in comparison to those 61 indicators. And what are those indicators? Those indicators are that what is the size of their home? Do they have a vehicle? What is the bill, energy cost? What is the electricity bill? How many people are employed? Are they government employees? Are they temporary laborers? So these are what is the education? How many people in the family? How many bread earners? So all these things are taken into account, and then these poverty scorecarding is made. That is it is absolutely transparent, and this transparency is appreciated, verified, and endorsed by international agencies.
Right, sir, your point is noted. On which I'll come to you, Zara, and here I would want you to respond to this more from the viewpoint of giving out microfinance loans. So we do understand the fact that yes, microfinance loans are extremely important, especially when it comes to economically empowering the marginalized community. But how do you feel can microfinance loans also be used so as to ensure that yes, people are encouraged to move towards more sustainable practices too?
Definitely, microfinancing, small loan schemes are very important, and without them, the poverty levels cannot be reduced. So, only if we give chance to the marginalized community to grow and perform in the right direction, can they be able to help deal with the climate change crisis. Because obviously, as we know, from the climate perspective, Pakistan is getting warmer twice as much as any other place on the planet. So we need to make proper surveys that how much money has been put into the company, and proper paperwork needs to be documented, and the people need to be engaged in such a way that whatever money is given to them, they're asked how they are going to use
right.
it.
And in this regard, it would be fair to say then that yes, people, more particularly women who are illiterate, they need to be given financial literacy skills too, because a lot of times people might be given loans, but they might not understand that how particularly is it that they can use them to their advantage. But when we talk about this from an environmentalist viewpoint, we also understand the fact there have been countries, more particularly Africa, where we see that green jobs have been that one way through which they've aimed to do away with poverty, because they've tried to employ a lot of people in the recycling sector, and this in turn creates more jobs, especially for the younger lot. So how do you feel can we equally apply such concepts in our Pakistani society?
Definitely, there is a huge scope of employing the underprivileged into our waste management system, because our waste management system is not performing well. We have huge landfills outside the cities where the slums are, where these underprivileged people are living, and they are faced with health hazards, and it's all because we have not employed enough people in recycling. So definitely we need to focus on the waste management program, enroll a lot of underprivileged people into it, creating green jobs so that they can be engaged into recycling the waste. This is how not only pollution levels will be reduced, but also environment will benefit.
Right. And in the long term, you would also be aiming to do away with poverty too. Mehrunisa, I'll come to you, and I would want you to respond to this, that too from a more gender perspective. When we talk about poverty, we also understand the fact that at a very deep level, it is also connected with violence against women or gender-based violence. Now, a lot of times we see that women who might be subjected to partner violence might be less prone to going out and seeking a job for themselves. It kind of shatters their very self-confidence. So as a gender expert in your own right, how do you feel can we tackle this problem looking at this social perspective too?
So Fatma, you pointed out rightly that gender-based violence has a huge impact on the confidence of a woman and their ability to pursue any kind of educational or employment opportunities, not to mention healthcare healthcare costs that are associated with that, and also the trauma which it inflicts on them can cause lasting psychological damage as well. So the way I think it is important to see that gender-based violence, at its very core, it is a power dynamic. It is the exertion of power or control by a man onto him because it makes him feel powerful. And I think actually equipping women economically and making sure that they have the ability to be financially independent is a big I wouldn't say a solution.
It is their power at the end of the day, because it actually empowers them to walk out of such relationships.
Absolutely, and they don't have to continue to feel like they are forced to live in an abusive situation or place. And I think that is the most important thing. Secondly, I would say that the existing laws and policies that are in place, we should try and implement them better. I also think increased recruitment of females in all public spheres, so be it your police, be it your judiciary, be it the court staff, it will actually make women's access to justice a lot easier and much less formidable.
So by that yardstick, in the longer run, it would also help them get back to life or rehabilitate, so to speak, when it comes to seeking the right support services, because a lot of times women might not get that rehabilitation just because they are poor. They don't have that access to the social support services
which includes counseling, mental health facilities, psychologists, psychiatrists where necessary.
Legal aid too.
Legal aid, absolutely. And I think this really, a multifaceted approach is needed, a multi-pronged kind of attack on the causes of gender-based violence.
That's very right. On which I'll come to you, sir, and here we must talk about the very important role of microfinance loans so as to help people plunge out of poverty. So in this regard, sir, when microfinance loans are given to poor people or deserving people, how is it microfinance institutions actually evaluate the effectiveness of the same? What kind of factors are we looking for here? Is it then the duration of the loan itself? Is it, for that matter, the repayment terms? Or is it the loan flexibility at the end of the day?
There are different means to gauge the impact of microfinance or giving loans to those people. For example, if we give somebody 100,000 to start a business and he pays back that 100,000, it is a proxy indicator that he has invested that money in a right way and he has done a successful business. That's the reason that he has returned 100,000. So if he fails, that will be an indicator. Then, of course, if somebody loses that money, he will not be able to pay because he's already a poor person. So in our case, and in case of all microfinance institutions, the recovery percentage is above 98%, which is a proxy indicator of the success of the borrower and the impact this money has created. Number one. Number two, if you want to see a long-term, you want to have a long-term assessment of the impact, then you will have to do it through academics. They will prepare, they will do a baseline survey, and then every year the quality of life and any improvements brought in the life of the family members will be measured and gauged. So it will be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years long series of different impact studies, which will tell you that they, on the first year, what was the income and what were the assets, and second, third, fourth, fifth year, has there been any increase? So there are some control groups, some uncontrolled groups. So there are different ways of academic exercise how to measure the impact. But as a practitioner, I will only say you that this is my anecdotal experience. Thousands of the people I meet, they tell that they are successful. So these are some, mixed ways to assess the impact.
And that would vary from case to case. Sir, but moving on, when we do talk about the work of the Pakistani government generally, and of course the work of the civil society too, how do you see both the government and the civil society collaborating so as to working towards a more poverty-free Pakistan and generally towards social inclusion too? From your own experiences, what are the lessons that you have learned and what are the lessons that you would want to pass down in this very particular issue?
Look, generally speaking, government and civil society, they are working in isolation. Government is, of course, doing a lot by education, by skill imparting, by Benazir income support program, building infrastructure, education, higher education, lower education, health facilities, clean drinking water, sanitation. All those efforts are to reduce poverty and meet the sustainable development goals, number one. On the other side, civil society organizations, not-for-profit organizations, they are also doing. They have opened langar khanas, they have opened orphanage houses, they have opened schools, they have opened hospitals, they are running microfinance programs. So, but my understanding is that there should be more collaboration and partnership between these two entities. No society can, progress. There are basically three major stakeholders in a society: private sector, public sector, and civil society. So unless all these three players join hands and work together in tandem, so the synergy will not be created. So referring to your question, I think there is a need for more collaboration between not-for-profit institutions and state apparatus, because this is how through this partnership and working together, they will be able to reach the poorest of the poor and reach the ultimate objective of mitigating poverty and alleviating poverty, and ultimately, absolutely elimination of poverty would be possible.
Right, sir. But in this regard, when we do talk about ensuring that microfinance loans are beneficial for all, it is equally important then that people, more particularly women, are also given that education so as to be able to utilize them in the most effective manner, because a lot of times we see that people might be given such loans, but they might not possess the requisite financial skills so as to be able to understand that how can they put them to the best use. On which I'll come to you, Zara, and here we must talk about the need for there to be not one, rather various targeted interventions. So when it comes to ensuring that yes, everybody does have that access to clean air and of course to a clean environment per se too, how do you at a very basic level link this with doing away with poverty? Because we do understand the fact that yes, if you do live in a pollution-free environment, there are greater chances of you being healthy and being in a better position to go out and earn too.
Definitely. Everyone has a right to clean air, clean water, and this is what the environmentalist perspective is, that to fight, to make the environment better and lead green activities, engage into awareness campaigns so that the environment can improve. And indirectly this will affect the poor people. They will have better lives, they will, their health will improve, and
they will be more motivated to work and plunge themselves out of poverty too.
Definitely.
But when we talk about this from the viewpoint of farming, now we also understand the fact that yes, agriculture is something which is extremely important for the Pakistani economy too. So how do you feel can we teach agriculturists, or for that matter farmers, so as to deal with extreme weather events? Because we have seen that in cases more than one, be it in cases of extreme droughts or heat waves, the agriculture does suffer, which in turn forces people into poverty too.
Definitely. This is a very important point, and I would like to elaborate on this, that we need to move from post-colonial, large-scale, semi-feudal and industrial modes of agriculture towards small-scale, perennial crop farming. Because we've seen that the large-scale agriculture associates with monocrops, which in turn weaks the crops and are prone to disease. They also rip the soil of its vitality. So if we go towards the perennial crops, they have a deeper and wider root networks, which basically vitalize the soil and hold the moisture in the soil and are resilient to droughts. So one strategy could be this. The other could be that the government could help the farmers by introducing to them modern technologies. Saudi Arabia is a very good example. You've seen that they are having crops in their deserts, and it is all due to these new technologies like spray agricultures, spray watering and drip watering.
Right.
for
So
the
technology
farmlands.
is something that we need to focus upon. This is something which earlier we were also discussing with Amrit Saab. I would want you to deliberate on that further. Now we do understand that technology is definitely very empowering, and in that regard I'm also referring to artificial intelligence too. But how do you feel can technology be used so as to eradicate poverty?
Like you pointed out, with artificial intelligence, it's become so easy to gain knowledge of any kind. It's also, I think, it's now that we are kind of developing AI in along lines where we can rely on AI to make decisions for us. I think in situations where, for example, such as how to divide resources in a society, which communities to give what resources to. If we get to a point where we can rely on AI, then that human error, which comes with discrimination, which comes with prejudice, that can be wiped out, because it's easier to control a code that you are feeding into, machine learning, etc., as opposed to 80 different public, offices and personnel working within that to make sure that they are not perpetuating gender inequality. And with technology, I think with social media, with the internet, it's become so much easier for anyone to market whatever the skills they have, to access jobs.
And also by that yardstick, technology allows you to open up your own business, to be a freelancer, so as to be able to earn perhaps a better livelihood. You don't
and
need
have
to do more.
access to financial services
exactly.
also, to understand banking, to help you with that, which women might not necessarily have the mobility or the freedom
even people
to.
who belong to the rural parts of the country, because a lot of times they might just not be educated, but access to digital services, access to the digital world is something which can show that they are financially included too, they are financially empowered. But when we talk about differently abled persons too, do you not feel here, Mehrunisa, these are those segments of the Pakistani society who might be more disproportionately impacted because of poverty, because they in themselves, they are already marginalized. When we talk about problems like poverty, they are further discriminated against.
100%, I agree, because I mean, it's if you look around you, even normally abled people don't have access to education, let alone access to education and special schools for those with special needs. And if you take this a step ahead, then people belonging to certain ethnicities, certain classes, certain communities, they are even more ostracized by society. So they live in complete isolation and they feel alienated.
And this is something that we did see emerging time and again during the COVID-19 pandemic too. So when it comes to doing away with the social stigma and discriminatory attitudes differently abled persons or any other vulnerable segment of the society might be subjected to, how do you propose can we do this vis-a-vis to financially empower them?
And I think you need to do an intersectional needs assessment. I think while we are aiming policies towards general poverty eradication, looking at communities like the transgender people or other marginalized groups, minorities, I think it's important to come up with policies that are for them. And the first step in this is to gather data about these marginalized communities so that we can address their challenges better, because their lived experiences of these issues will be different perhaps from the majority of the population that suffers from this same.
But can we not, by analogy, have similar campaigns when it comes to reducing poverty too? How can we engage young people in Pakistan so as to come forward and lead by way of example?
Being an environmentalist, I look at things from a different perspective, that how we can make people more conscious about their environment, to improve their environment in such a way that they can generate their own livelihoods from it. So engage them in such practices. So beekeeping has been one of such practices where by taking the training of beekeeping, people can rear, underprivileged people can rear bees, and then they can generate money by selling the honey, by selling the value-added products that you derive from the bees. Definitely, it's a whole big thing. And, if you take it seriously, you can make a lot of money and alleviate poverty.
Right. On which I'll come to you, Mehrunisa, before we conclude today's show. So when it comes to the role of media, we all understand that social media is extremely important. But when it comes to electronic media, how do you see Pakistani media putting forward the narrative of poor people? Because a lot of times we have seen in dramas more than one that people who are poor, or who for that matter belong to the downtrodden segments of the Pakistani society, they are always portrayed to be that way. Do you not feel that it's high time that we also project them to be heroes of their own stories too, that they've moved past that poverty and now today they are extremely successful in their lives?
Yes, Fatma, I think it's extremely important to portray them in more encouraging and motivating narratives. So perhaps narratives which show the importance of hard work, which show how a person's attitude towards the female members of their family led to the alleviation of poverty for that household, how the decision to have fewer children resulted in them giving a better quality of life to their children vis-a-vis perhaps the other, families in that village or rural community. So I think there are so many ways where the media can highlight this. Similarly, with poverty as well, I think awareness campaigns focused around how people can earn their livelihood from home as well. So, you are catering to women as well, or perhaps mothers who can't step outside their house. I think the media plays an extremely important role, but also in educating people about their economic rights. So many people in the informal sector get taken advantage of, even domestic staff, because there's no written contracts, there's no guaranteed leave, they have no employment protection.
And this is only because they are poor, because had they not been poor, they would have been in a better position so as to bargain their employment terms.
So
I
think,
can say
yes, please.
that, for women empowerment also, this beekeeping project is really vital because women can start it at home without going out anywhere. With a small box of bees, they can generate money. So I think it really applies here.
Right, and that's definitely a very unique way to look at things. And in this regard, one thing that I would want you to comment further is the fact that we definitely need to work towards more diverse and inclusive portrayals of perhaps the trans community of the country too. A lot of times we see dramas being made, or for that matter, including the trans community, but the portrayal or the narrative which is then given, that in itself is extremely myopic.
No, I agree. So I think more depictions where you portray trans people as normal people, able to work in normal professions, as doctors, as lawyers, as engineers, as businessmen, and the kind of that feeling of, oh, this is something that is alien to normalcy, that is taken away from that, and that helps change people's mindset of accepting them in every walk of life, which is how it should be. And in this, I think there's a huge role to be played by electronic media. I mean, even on various social media platforms, you see even trans people from other marginalized communities have achieved celebrity status because of the amount of following they have.
Right.
And I think the power of electronic media needs to be leveraged in this instance to empower these communities and to give a face to the faceless and also lend a voice to the voiceless, because there are so many people who will be able to relate to them or find the content they put out there relatable. And this, of course, has huge economic kind of reward and financial gain for them as well, because they get brand endorsements, the people want them to sell their products because they have a following, and that is really something.
And then you see that this, at the end of the day, is something which is equally empowering, rather uplifting for the Pakistani society at large, because by putting forward the transgender's best foot, you're ensuring that we are, in letter and spirit, actually working towards a more diverse and inclusive society. On which, sir, I'll come to you, and to conclude today's show, so what advice would you give to the young people out there, especially those who do want to make a very proactive, meaningful effort so as to uplift others out of poverty, but unfortunately those who do not have access to resources to do the same? In this regard, what are the mechanisms, what are the strategies that they then can, of course, employ in their limited means?
My advice is, they should take some skill. They should, get maximum skill, whether it may be in IT, whether it may be he may become an electrician or a plumber or a woodwork or any kind of mechanical or other thing. So this skill is extremely important, and then of course hard work, determination, and one should be absolutely if somebody doesn't have a passion, all states from other stakeholders will not be able to take him out of the quagmire of poverty. So the passion, the willingness to work hard, professional ethics, and then of course with the the skills, and then if he gets access to finances to start a business, to become an entrepreneur. So this is a pathway to come out of poverty. And my advice would be, have a passion, work hard, and get some skills.
Right, sir, your point is noted. On which note, I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, Ms. Zara. Thank you so much, Ms. Meronisa, and thank you so much, sir, for your time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about poverty as a very pressing socio-economic issue in the Pakistani society. We also spoke about not one, rather various factors which actually contribute to poverty per se. In this regard, if we are serious in overcoming poverty, then things, of course, that we do need to work upon is definitely improving people's access to the education system. In this regard, something that we equally need to focus upon is to do away with health disparities, to mitigate climate change impacts, and of course by that yardstick to do away with gender inequality, which in itself perpetuates cycles of poverty. For this, we all need to work together. We need to ensure that we have the right policies in place, and for this, of course, we equally need to ensure that the community at large is engaged too. Thank you for watching The Society. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.